Team 24 of 52 teams of 8 help make America wiser and kinder with antique rival wisdom team quotes that have passed the test of time to make humanity great, with words of wisdom to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. Give your kids free, easy, extra advantage math, spelling, and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com. Free, easy math wisdom workbooks with Octo-Repetition to grow math self-confidence. Free, easy Alphase Cypher coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. Team quote 24.1. Man is a reasoning rather than a reasonable animal. Alexander Hamilton, 1757 to 1804. That's a fascinating quote from Alexander Hamilton that makes a subtle but important distinction. Hamilton suggests that while humans have the capacity for reason and logical thinking, we are reasoning. We don't necessarily use that reason to arrive at reasonable conclusions or behave in reasonable ways. This observation seems particularly insightful given Hamilton's experiences during the American Revolution and early Republic, where he witnessed both the heights of Enlightenment thinking and the depths of human irrationality in political and social conflicts. As one of the Federalist Papers' authors and first Treasury Secretary, he would have seen firsthand how people could use sophisticated reasoning to justify positions driven by emotion, self-interest, or prejudice. What do you think about Hamilton's observation? Do you see examples of this distinction between being reasoning versus reasonable in today's world? Team quote 24.2. Wisdom begins in wonder. Socrates, 470 BC, 399 BC. Let's explore this profound statement from Socrates, as it captures a fundamental truth about the nature of knowledge and learning that remains relevant even after 2,400 years. To understand this idea fully, we should first consider what Socrates meant by both wisdom and wonder. In the Socratic tradition, wisdom isn't just about accumulating facts or information. Rather, it represents a deeper understanding of ourselves, others, and the world around us. It's about knowing what we don't know, a concept that became famous through the phrase Socratic wisdom. Wonder, in this context, refers to a state of intellectual curiosity and amazement about the world. It's that feeling we get when we look at the stars and ask why, or watch a child learn to walk and think, how? This kind of wonder is different from mere confusion or bewilderment. It's an active, engaging state of mind that drives us to explore and question. Think about how children naturally embody this principle. They begin their journey of learning through wonder, asking endless questions, examining everything around them, and maintaining a constant state of curiosity about how things work. Their wonder leads them to discover and understand their world piece by piece. The relationship between wonder and wisdom works in several ways. First, wonder motivates us to learn. When we're genuinely amazed by something, we're driven to understand it better. Second, wonder keeps our minds open to new possibilities and perspectives. If we think we already know everything, we stop learning. But when we maintain a sense of wonder, we remain receptive to new insights and understanding. Consider how this applies to scientific discovery. The greatest scientific breakthroughs often begin with someone wondering about something that others take for granted. Newton wondered why apples fall downward. Einstein wondered what it would be like to ride alongside a beam of light. These moments of wonder led to profound wisdom about the nature of our universe. But Socrates' insight goes beyond just academic or scientific knowledge. In our personal lives, wonder can lead to wisdom about ourselves and others. when we approach relationships with curiosity rather than judgment, when we wonder about others' perspectives instead of assuming we understand them, we grow wiser in our understanding of human nature. This brings us to a practical question. How can we cultivate more wonder in our lives? One way is to practice asking questions, even about things we think we understand. Another is to approach familiar situations with fresh eyes, trying to see them as if for the first time. These practices can help us maintain the kind of wonder that Socrates saw as the foundation of wisdom. Team quote 24.3, doubt, of whatever kind, can be ended by action alone. Thomas Carlyle, 1795 to 1881. Let me help unpack this profound statement from Thomas Carlyle, as it offers deep insights into the relationship between uncertainty and action. Carlyle, a Scottish philosopher and historian, was writing during a time of immense social and technological change in the 19th century, which makes his observation particularly interesting. To understand this idea fully, let's first consider what Carlyle means by doubt. He's referring not just to simple uncertainty, but to the whole spectrum of hesitation, indecision, and internal questioning that can paralyze us. The phrase "of whatever kind" is crucial here. Carlyle is suggesting that this principle applies to all forms of doubt, whether they're intellectual, moral, personal, or practical. Now, let's examine why action alone can end doubt. Think of learning to ride a bicycle. You can study the physics of balance, read about proper technique, and watch countless tutorials. But until you actually get on the bike and start pedaling, you'll never resolve your doubt about whether you can ride. The action of riding provides a kind of knowledge that thinking alone cannot achieve. This principle extends far beyond physical skills. Consider someone doubting their career choice. They might analyze pros and cons endlessly, seek advice, and still remain uncertain. But by actually working in the field, even temporarily, they gain concrete experience that either confirms or dismisses their doubts in a way that pure contemplation never could. The word alone in Carlyle's statement is particularly significant. He's not saying that action helps end doubt or that it's one of several ways to resolve uncertainty. He's making the stronger claim that action is the only true resolution. This connects to a deeper philosophical truth. Certain kinds of knowledge can only come through direct experience. This idea has fascinating parallels in various philosophical traditions. The American pragmatists who came after Carlyle would develop similar ideas about how truth reveals itself through practical consequences. Eastern philosophical traditions often emphasize the importance of direct experience over theoretical knowledge. Even modern psychological approaches like exposure therapy are based on the principle that facing our fears through action is more effective than just thinking about them. However, it's important to understand what this doesn't mean. Carlyle isn't advocating for reckless action without thought. Rather, he's suggesting that at some point, after reasonable consideration, action becomes necessary to move forward. It's about recognizing when additional contemplation stops being productive and starts becoming a form of avoidance. To apply this wisdom practically, we might ask ourselves, where in our lives are we stuck in cycles of doubt? Are we using endless analysis as a substitute for necessary action? Sometimes, taking even a small step forward can provide more clarity than hours of additional thinking. Team quote 24.4. A chip on the shoulder is a sure sign of what higher up. Brigham Young, 1801 to 1877. Let me help unpack this clever and insightful metaphor from Brigham Young, as it offers a fascinating psychological observation about human behavior. The quote uses wordplay around would to make a deeper point about personality and emotional maturity. Let's start by understanding the literal meaning of a chip on the shoulder. This phrase originated in the 19th century, when people would literally place a wooden chip on their shoulder as a challenge to others to knock it off, essentially inviting a fight. Over time, it evolved to describe someone who seems ready to take offense or start an argument at the slightest provocation. The genius of Jung's observation lies in how he extends this wooden metaphor. By suggesting theirs would higher up, he's implying that the aggressive or defensive attitude, the chip, is connected to intellectual or emotional woodenness in the person's head. In other words, a kind of mental rigidity or lack of wisdom. This metaphor works on multiple psychological levels. First, it suggests that aggressive or defensive behavior often stems from deeper issues. Just as a wooden chip doesn't appear on someone's shoulder by itself, but must come from a larger piece of wood, confrontational behavior usually has underlying causes, perhaps insecurity, past hurts, or unresolved conflicts. The spatial relationship in the metaphor is also significant. The would higher up suggests that the root cause in the head manifests as visible symptoms on the shoulder. This aligns with modern psychological understanding of how internal states influence external behaviors. When someone is internally rigid or inflexible in their thinking, it often shows up as defensive behavior in their interactions with others. The quote also carries an implicit suggestion about self-awareness. Just as someone might not realize they have would higher up, people who are quick to take offense often don't recognize their own role in creating confrontational situations. They might see others as the source of their problems without recognizing their own rigid thinking patterns. To understand this concept more deeply, consider how this pattern plays out in everyday life. Someone who gets defensive about receiving feedback at work might be carrying rigid beliefs about their own perfection. A person who frequently gets into arguments about their political views might have inflexible thinking about different perspectives. In each case, the observable behavior, the chip, points to less visible but more fundamental issues in thinking patterns. This understanding gives us a valuable tool for both self-reflection and understanding others. When we encounter someone with a chip on their shoulder, rather than responding to the defensive behavior itself, we might consider what underlying rigidity of thinking might be causing it. And in ourselves, when we notice we're being defensive, we might ask what rigid thinking patterns we need to examine. Team quote 24.5. You are one of the forces of nature. Jules Michelet, 1798 to 1874. Let me help explore this profound statement from Jules Michelet, a French historian known for his poetic and philosophical approach to understanding human nature and history. This quote represents a powerful shift in how we might think about our place in the world. To fully appreciate this idea, let's first consider what we mean by forces of nature. When we typically think of natural forces, we might imagine gravity, wind, ocean currents, or the growth of plants. These are fundamental energies and processes that shape our world. Each operates according to its own patterns and principles, influences its environment, and participates in the larger dance of natural systems. Now, Michelet makes a revolutionary suggestion by placing humans in this same category. He's not just saying we're part of nature, which would be significant enough, but that we are one of nature's forces, active, powerful, and fundamental to the world's processes. This perspective challenges both the view that humans are somehow separate from nature and the notion that we are passive observers of natural phenomena. Consider how this plays out in reality. Like other natural forces, humans shape landscapes, influence climate, affect the distribution of species, and alter the flow of rivers. We create new materials, redirect energy, and even influence the evolution of other species. Our actions, both individual and collective, ripple through the complex web of Earth systems just as surely as do earthquakes or rainfall. But Michelet's insight goes deeper than just our physical impact on the environment. By characterizing humans as a force of nature, he suggests that our creativity, consciousness, and capacity for purposeful action are themselves natural phenomena. Our thoughts, innovations, and cultural creations are as much a part of nature's expression as a spider's web or a beaver's dam, just more complex and far-reaching in their effects. This perspective has profound implications for how we understand our role in the world. If we are truly a force of nature, then our actions aren't unnatural or separate from the natural world. They're an integral part of it. This doesn't absolve us of responsibility. Rather, it suggests that we need to understand and direct our force wisely, just as we learn to work with other natural forces. Think about how this might change our approach to environmental challenges. Instead of seeing human activity as inherently destructive or unnatural, we might ask how our natural force can work in harmony with other natural forces. Just as wind and water can be either destructive or beneficial depending on their application, human activity can be channeled in ways that enhance rather than damage the systems we're part of. This understanding also affects how we might think about human creativity and innovation. Our drive to build, create, and transform isn't an artificial imposition on the natural world. It's part of our nature as a force within it. The key becomes learning to express this force in ways that contribute to the health and balance of the larger system. Team quote 24.6, More Than Kisses, Letters Mingle Souls. John Donne 1572 to 1631. Let me help explore this beautiful observation from John Donne, a metaphysical poet known for his deep explorations of love, spirituality, and human connection. To understand its full meaning, we need to consider both its historical context and its timeless insights about human communication. In Donne's time, letters were the primary means of distance communication. They were carefully crafted, often taking days or weeks to reach their recipients. This created a different relationship with written words than we have today. Each letter was a precious artifact of connection, carrying not just information but emotional resonance and physical traces of the sender. Their handwriting, perhaps a lingering scent, the marks of their seal. The comparison to kisses is particularly significant. A kiss is one of our most intimate physical connections, a direct meeting of two people. Yet Donne suggests that letters can create an even deeper connection. They mingle souls. This speaks to how written words can bridge not just physical distance, but also the space between our inner selves. Think about how this works. When we write a letter, we engage in a process of translating our thoughts, feelings, and experiences into words. This requires introspection and self-awareness. We must examine our inner world carefully to express it to another. Meanwhile, the reader engages in a similarly intimate process, taking in these words and reconstructing them into understanding. This creates a meeting of minds that can be more profound than physical contact. Consider how letters allow us to present our most carefully considered thoughts. Unlike conversation, which happens in real time, letter writing gives us space to reflect, revise, and perfect our expression. We can share vulnerable thoughts we might struggle to voice in person. We can craft our words to capture exactly what we mean to say. This idea becomes even more fascinating when we consider how it applies to different types of written communication. Love letters might be the most obvious example. They can indeed create profound intimacy between people. But Donne's insight extends to other forms as well. Think about how reading someone's memoir can make us feel deeply connected to them, or how a well-written piece of poetry can seem to speak directly to our soul. The word mingle is particularly important here. It suggests not just communication, but a genuine blending or interweaving of consciousness. When we read someone's deeply felt words, we don't just receive information. We temporarily inhabit their perspective, feeling what they felt, seeing what they saw. This is a kind of intimacy that physical proximity alone cannot achieve. Team quote 24.7. Nothing can be done except little by little. Charles Baudelaire, 1821 to 1867. This quote from the French poet Charles Baudelaire captures a profound truth about human progress and achievement. Let's explore its deeper meaning and implications. The quote reflects a fundamental principle about how meaningful change and accomplishment occur in the world. Baudelaire, writing in 19th century France during a time of massive social and cultural transformation, recognized that sustainable progress rarely comes through sudden leaps or dramatic gestures. Instead, lasting change emerges through the patient accumulation of small actions and incremental steps. This wisdom applies across many domains of human experience. Consider how we learn a new language. We begin with basic vocabulary, gradually build grammatical understanding, and slowly develop fluency through constant practice. Or think about how great works of literature are written, not in a single burst of inspiration, but through daily dedication to putting words on paper, revising, and refining. The quote also carries an implicit message about patience and persistence. When we understand that meaningful accomplishment requires gradual progress, we're less likely to become discouraged by not seeing immediate results. This perspective helps us appreciate the value of consistent effort over time. Interestingly, Baudelaire's own life reflected this principle. His masterwork, Les Fleurs du Mal, The Flowers of Evil, was developed over many years, with poems being written, revised, and refined individually before being collected into the revolutionary volume that would influence generations of poets. Team quote 24.8. Let the consequences be what they will, I am determined to proceed. James Otis 1725 to 1783. This powerful declaration from James Otis, a prominent American revolutionary and lawyer, reflects a profound commitment to principle over pragmatism. The quote emerges from a fascinating historical context. Otis was a leading voice against British colonial policy in the years before the American Revolution. What makes this statement particularly compelling is how it captures the revolutionary spirit of 18th century America. Otis himself demonstrated this resolve in his famous speech against the writs of assistance in 1761, where he argued against British search and seizure practices for nearly 5 hours. His stance represented a crucial philosophical shift among colonial leaders, a willingness to accept significant personal and collective risk in pursuit of what they saw as fundamental rights and liberties. The quote structure is also noteworthy, beginning with an acknowledgement of potential consequences before asserting an unwavering determination. This pattern reflects the careful deliberation followed by resolute action that characterized many Revolutionary-era decisions. It's a sentiment that would later echo in other pivotal American documents, including the Declaration of Independence's pledge of lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. Otis's words continue to resonate today because they speak to universal human experiences of standing firm in one's convictions despite uncertain or threatening outcomes. They remind us that meaningful change often requires courage in the face of unknown consequences. And to help raise school test scores and self-confidence, you can give your kids free, easy, extra advantage math, spelling, and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free, easy math, wisdom workbooks with Octo-Repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free, easy alpha Cypher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this Cypher quote of encouragement using either our learning to spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily. So change your shirt and change the world. Social qualities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms, like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. I think, therefore I think tease. I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder, with blatantly subliminal messages promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults, you can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today at 52of8.com.